The sound of children's laughter should have been music to anyone's ears, but the 12-year-old Isabella Chen, it felt like a foreign language she'd never learned to speak. Standing behind the floor-to-ceiling windows of her family's penthouse, she watched the kids in Central Park below, their joy seeming as distant as the stars. Money, she'd learned early, could buy everything except the one thing she craved most: a genuine friendship. Isabella's life was a carefully orchestrated symphony of private tutors, exclusive galas, and business dinners where adults spoke over her head about stock portfolios and real estate ventures. Her father, Marcus Chen, had built his technology empire from nothing, transforming their family from struggling immigrants into one of New York's wealthiest dynasties. But success, Isabella discovered, could be the loneliest achievement of all. "Miss Isabella, your etiquette lesson begins in 10 minutes, announced Mrs. Pemberton, the stern British nanny who'd raised her since her mother's passing 5 years earlier. Isabella nodded silently, her reflection in the window showing a girl who looked far older than her years, dressed in designer clothes that felt more like armor than clothing. That afternoon, everything changed during what should have been a routine visit to the Chen Foundation's newest project, a community center in Brooklyn. Isabella had attended dozens of these ribbon-cutting ceremonies, standing beside her father as photographers captured their charitable moments for the society pages. She'd perfected the art of the polite smile, the gracious wave, the appropriate responses to reporters' questions about giving back. But this time, as her father delivered his speech to the gathered crowd of dignitaries and local officials, Isabella's attention wandered to a group of children playing in the small courtyard adjacent to the new building. Unlike the manicured playgrounds she was accustomed to, this space was hummed at cracked concrete painted with hopscotch squares, a rusty swing set, and a basketball hoop with a frayed net. The children were a mix of ages and backgrounds, their clothes showing signs of wear but their faces radiant with pure joy. They played with intensity and imagination that Isabella had never witnessed, turning cardboard boxes into spaceships, creating elaborate games with nothing but their creativity and infectious energy. As her father's speech droned on about investing in communities and building futures, Isabella found herself gravitating toward the fence separating the ceremony from the playground. She pressed her fingers against the chain link, watching a particularly animated game of tag unfold before her eyes. That's when she noticed Tima, a boy about her age with kind brown eyes and a smile that seemed to light up his entire face. He wore a faded Superman t-shirt and sneakers held together with duct tape, but he moved with the confidence of someone who owned the world. When he spotted Isabella watching through the fence, instead of staring or whispering like most children did when they recognized her from newspaper photos, he simply walked over. "Hey," he said, his voice warm and unguarded. "I'm Miguel. You look pretty lonely over there." Isabella felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crack. "I'm Isabella," she replied softly, surprised by how natural it felt to introduce herself without her usual formal distance. "That's a pretty name," Miguel said, then glanced back at his friends who had paused their game to watch the interaction. "We're playing freeze tag. It's way more fun than it sounds, I promise." He paused, studying her expensive dress and perfectly styled hair with the kind of directness only children possess. "Will you play with us?" 4 simple words. 4 words that cut through years of isolation, through layers of privilege and protection, straight to the heart of a girl who had forgotten what it felt like to be invited somewhere simply because someone wanted her company, not her family's money or connections. Isabella looked back toward the ceremony where her father was still speaking, where Mrs. Pemberton stood watching with disapproving eyes, where the weight of expectations pressed down like a heavy blanket. Then she looked at Miguel's outstretched hand, at the group of children waiting with patient curiosity, and for the first time in years, she chose joy over obligation. "I'd love to," she whispered, and meant it with every fiber of her being. What followed was the most liberating hour of Isabella's life. She kicked off her expensive shoes and ran barefoot across the concrete, her laughter mixing with the chorus of new friends who cared nothing about her last name or her father's net worth. She was in freeze tag, learned to play double dutch with a rope made from extension cords, and discovered that skin knees from concrete were badges of honor rather than cause for alarm. Miguel appointed himself her unofficial guide to real kid stuff, teaching her playground slang and the unspoken rules of childhood democracy. When she stumbled trying to hop on one foot during a game of hopscotch, instead of the careful assistance she was accustomed to from adults, she received something infinitely more valuably: genuine laughter and encouragement to try again. "You're pretty cool, Isabella," Miguel said during a brief rest, both of them breathing heavily and grinning widely. "Most rich kids are kind of stuck up, but you're different." "How do you know I'm rich?" Isabella asked, though she suspected the answer involved her designer dress and the small army of security personnel watching from a distance. "Lucky guess," Miguel grinned. "But it doesn't matter, you're fun to be around. That's what counts." The spell was broken when Mrs. Pemberton's sharp voice cut through the afternoon air like a blade. "Miss Isabella, what on earth are you doing? Your dress is ruined, and your father is waiting in the car." Isabella felt the familiar weight of her two worlds colliding. The children around her fell silent, sensing the shift in atmosphere as the stern-faced nanny approached with obvious disapproval. Isabella looked down at her dirt-stained dress, her grass-stained knees, her disheveled hair, and for a moment felt ashamed not of her appearance, but of the life that made such simple joy seem scandalous. "I have to go," she said quietly to Miguel, who nodded with understanding beyond his ears. "Will you come back?" he asked, and Isabella heard hope and genuine affection in his voice, emotions she'd rarely encountered from her peer group of privileged children who attended the same exclusive schools and charity functions. "I don't know," she answered honestly, feeling tears prick her eyes as Mrs. Pemberton's hand closed firmly on her shoulder. As she was led away toward the waiting limousine, Isabella heard Miguel call out, "Hey Isabella, you're always welcome here. We'll save a spot for you in our games." That night, alone in her enormous bedroom overlooking the glittering city, Isabella replayed every moment of the afternoon. She thought about Miguel's easy acceptance, the way the other children had made room for her in their circle without question or calculation. She remembered the feeling of running without destination, of laughing without restraint, of being valued for her participation rather than her pedigree. For the first time in her young life, Isabella Chen understood that the most precious things couldn't be purchased, inherited, or earned through achievement. They could only be given freely, heart to heart, in moments of genuine human connection. And in a playground in Brooklyn, surrounded by children who had very little but shared everything, she had discovered the richness that had been missing from her privileged existence. The sound of children's laughter, she realized, wasn't a foreign language after all, it was her native tongue, just waiting to be remembered.